Welcome to the Leading at the Next Level podcast with Dove Development and Consulting, the show built to provide ongoing support for your leadership journey. Cindy and I have had the most amazing opportunity over the last couple of months to interview some partners and executive panelists that are working with us on the Leadership Legacy experience on June 13th. Today, I get the chance, I think it's actually the last one in the sequence as we do them live, but depending on when you see and hear this, it may not matter to you, but I get to have this conversation with a great friend of ours we've gotten to know over the last 6 or 7 or 8 years, Alex Sellner. Alex lives in Johnson City, Tennessee, but Alex has been part of our executive leadership lead think tank the last few years. But even before that, we developed a friendship through the work Cindy and I have been blessed to be able to do with the Jobs for Veterans State Grant Team within Virginia's, at the time, the Virginia Employment Commission, now Virginia Works. I think Alex will explain a little bit of that later. But before I butcher anything and talk about all the different stuff, like we worked in the food industry, specifically in grocery stores, bagging groceries at the same time, just hours away from one another, and all the different correlations we've had in our lives, let Alex do a real introduction about his professional background and his experience. He's got some amazing experience. Alex, tell him who you are, brother.
Hey, thanks, Wes. First of all, it's a pleasure to be here, and I appreciate you having me. And that old adage, you save the best for last, that's probably not true in this case, but that's okay. I don't mind going last at all, however that works out in your series. Listen, I've enjoyed your friendship with so many. You've been a blessing to me, both like as friends, but also in a mentoring capacity, as I've picked up some leadership skills from you. And yeah, so as far as my professional background, I served in the United States Air Force for a little over 21 years, in a lot of various roles, from aircraft mechanic to recruiter to superintendent and whatnot, before I retired. And then I was still seeking employment with a large family and stuff that I have. So I made the jump over to state employment to start my second career here in Virginia. And at the time, the job was with the Virginia Employment Commission. And last year, in July of last year, the agency transformation. So in Virginia, they came up with what's called Virginia Works. And so Virginia Employment Commission did not dissolve completely. It still exists. Now they serve strictly unemployment insurance claims. And that seems like what most people really knew it for anyway. But like two sides of the coin, we have an employment side. It's what the transformation into the new state agency, Virginia Works, has been, is development across the state, out of these state agencies now into one agency. And so we're excited about what we do, serving both employers and job seekers in Virginia, making that connection, helping meet business needs and job seeker needs.
So talk a little bit more about some of the different things you were able to do in your Air Force career.
So I started off in aircraft maintenance. It was avionics, meaning I worked on like radars and navigation, communication equipment and whatnot. I was also got a really cool chance to be a flying crew chief, and I got to take the aircraft around the world. I've been to like 32 countries. A lot of travel, it was a lot of fun. Then I kind of made a transition where I went into teaching for a few years, teaching electronics, then back to being mobile in the Air Force. Ultimately became a recruiter for a couple of years, and then finished out my last 6 years down in Georgia on combat search and rescue platforms. We had HC-130s and H-860 rescue helicopters. And I became superintendent of maintenance down there. That to me, that was the end of my career, but it was the pinnacle of my career. The caliber of the people that I worked with, they made a lasting impression on me. I hope I was able to serve them well, take care of them when I was there. And they have a really strong motto. And I think some of the questions you might lead into later, I'll even go into that a little bit if you wish.
Beautiful. Now, I asked that question because both in that career, because I knew a lot of the background, as well as what I've known you since 2017 when we first met with the Jobs for Veterans State Grant Team, you've provided exemplary service in a leadership capacity. It's not about barking orders. It's not about being in charge. It's about how can I serve the people I'm responsible to? And you've done it so well. Alex, that's hard. You and I talk frequently about the emotional burden that comes with leading a team. What's your clear purpose for that? Where do you get that fulfillment from being able to provide that service to your team?
Well, ironically, I think what I've found a clear purpose in for me is serving other people, and that's been like throughout my whole life. Whether that's taking care of, I lost my mom at an early age, but I helped with my siblings, raising them as the oldest child, and then and through high school, whether it was team sports or whatever, I love being part of a team and like making a difference collectively, right? But doing my part to make a difference as a whole. I found that satisfaction in the military. I didn't know I would enjoy it as much as I did. Staying 21 years was not my original plan. I was going to do 4 years, but I absolutely loved it. And I got to serve other people in the military mission. The thought that you're making a difference and a nation is relying on you, that was huge to me. And so when I transitioned out of the military, I wasn't just really looking for a job. I mean, because jobs are everywhere, jobs are abundant, but I'm like, where do I fit in? What where would I make a difference? And so with this state job, when I first got out, I was a local veteran employment representative inside the jobs for the state grant. And in that capacity, I served employers, telling them about people like me, like other veterans. And again, everybody on my team is a veteran. So I found a lot of purpose in my team. I've moved on from that role to where I'm the program director now. But ironically, I still have that same purpose, I would say in a greater capacity, because now I get to serve my whole team. They're all veterans, and I get to try to help them be successful as they serve other veterans. And they collectively touch way more veterans than I could ever influence by myself. And so that's where I get the satisfaction out of my job, just knowing that they're out there doing a lot of times above and beyond what I could do, even individually, much less as a group. I am really surrounded by some giant people, and their characters are pretty amazing.
Yeah. And hey, Cindy and I have been blessed to get to know almost all of your team, with the exception of a few of the newer folks that have come on in the last few months. And you're spot on. You've got some amazing
Sure.
people on your team. One of the things that I've had the opportunity to see over the last 25 years is how effective the friends I've had that have served in the military are at truly leading. Now, oftentimes we hear the idea of militaristic style leadership, and it's a bad thing. And that's not what I've experienced. Even with that background, with the 21 plus years in the United States Air Force, even with your background, Alex, why have you been so intentional at involving yourself in ongoing leadership development?
So I found myself being put into positions in the military where I got to lead other people, and in the military, I think it's unique sometimes because you find those opportunities early on, if you will, in your career, and it gives you a little bit of room for like making mistakes and whatnot, if you will. But you're right, you definitely don't have to rule with some type of like iron fist. Now there's times that you have to get something done and you don't have time to explain it. But I've just always been intrigued by the idea of influencing others and doing that through like a charismatic way and helping people understand the reason why. I attribute a lot of that probably to my faith as well. Jesus was a great example of a leader who didn't come in an authoritarian way, but he changed the world literally for thousands of years. So there, that I guess that's the greatest example. That's kind of what I inspired to be, but often fall short. But yeah, I have, and I think that's why leadership is important to me, because you get to make a difference in people's professional lives, but if you do it right, you're making a difference in their life, their personal lives, and it's like a ripple effect. You touch them, touch other people, and it's really cool.
Yeah, that's outstanding, Alex. I really appreciate how you answer that and bringing the whole person into the mix with that. Now, I said earlier that we've developed a really cool friendship over the last several years, and I mean that from the bottom of my heart. When I ask you, though, because you're coming from 4, 5, 6 hours away from Johnson City to Harrisonburg, Virginia, and you do that every quarter to be part of the Executive Leadership Elite think tank. But when I said, hey, will you be part of this executive panel talking about how you help each individual team member connect their purpose to that purpose of your organization, why were you willing to do that?
Well, I mean, I'm willing to do a lot of things you ask me because, of course, our friendship, right? Just as you're willing to help me out when needed. But I think more than that, so for me, the idea of leadership is that leaders are great communicators. And I feel like in this setting that you're doing it with a panel, I've learned over the years that as a leader, it's not important that you're the smartest person in the room, but it is important to be surrounded by other smart people who can help you make smart decisions. I think a panel does exactly that. I realize I won't be your smartest person on that panel by any means, but I will be learning as much that day as sharing my own experiences with other people who are excited about learning. And I mean, that's what, to me, that's what leadership is about. I don't know that any of us arrive, but it's good leaders are people who constantly try to improve, not just themselves, but they want to see the people around them succeed as well. So yeah, that's why when you were like, hey, if you want to be part of this panel, I said, sure, count me in. I jumped at the chance.
Yeah, and I actually misspoke. So you have kind of took the curveball pitch for me on this, and you were initially going to be on the third panel, and you've moved to the second one. And quite frankly, Alex, the reason I felt so comfortable asking you, could you help me with this change, because one of the other panelists had a scheduling change and isn't getting into later, because I've seen you do both things so exceptionally well with your team. And that panel, the second panel that you're a part of, is more about here's our organizational purpose, but we've talked about that too, and how you really cast that vision for everybody within your team about here's how we serve this specific segment of veterans that may not get the service if we don't do it. So I kind of lead into that. I share that to set you up for the next question. And that's really, what would you like anybody catching this before, after the event, whatever, to really know about the Jobs for Veterans State Grant team, the service that you guys provide, whatever that would be?
So we are veterans serving other veterans. I think that makes us unique. Everyone that works for me is a veteran across all the different branches of service. We don't have a Space Force person on our team yet. We just haven't found the right one looking to work with us yet, but we will one day. We have so we range from Coast Guard, Marines, Navy, Army, Air Force, and the team is just, they're excellent. They're a bunch of professionals. They help veterans, if they're not ready, become job ready. And we link those up with employers who are looking to fill their workforce needs by hiring veterans to make that, connection. I think a lot of people just don't know of us and the other services that are available for them at your American Job Center. So we're not unique to Virginia. This program exists nationwide and actually in 3 territories for the U.S. So if any employer was looking to be interested in hiring veterans or just needing some help in hiring in general, go to your American Job Center. And likewise, if you're a job seeker, especially if you're a veteran, get to the American Job Center to see what else is available. You might qualify for this or another program, and it's a way to use some federal dollars to amplify your skills and abilities and knowledge, and then hopefully plug in to some to a career that you want to be in. We're hoping to help people find not just a job, but like a career. We want to be that pivot point, if you will, in their transition.
Alex, I'll make a quick plug for the system, the agency, and so on. More than a dozen years ago now, I remember I was doing a massive amount of hiring for a large manufacturing company. And I remember one particular orientation group on a Friday morning that 75% of the candidates that I hired that week to join our team were through the Jobs for Veterans State Grant resource that I had access to at the time. And it was so fulfilling for me, but I also had just a wonderful experience all the way through, and been able to connect other clients and employers and so on over the years. Not everybody has that same experience every time. And not every group of orientation that I did was 75% veterans. But when we did, we could often find some absolutely amazing candidates who just needed a chance. And maybe they went through some life struggles, but your team, not at the time, but the team you became a part of and now the team you lead, was amazing at help connecting those dots and really getting those folks ready from whatever circumstance that was a barrier to them at the time to be fantastic employees. So it was a lot of fulfillment that I got from it too. So I really appreciate the work that you guys do. Now, give me an example. You could do this you could do this for days because you and I've talked about it. I know a lot of the folks on your team. Give me an example of something successful, a project or a campaign that you guys as a team have really spearheaded and the impact that it's had either on the community, an industry, or even if you want to share about an individual. Obviously, we won't talk about names, but something that you're really proud of that's happened within your team.
Oh, there's daily I get emails from different members of my team where they've like far and exceeded, helping someone at a personal level, where they might be helping someone who's like in a very much a homeless situation, to overcome some of these obstacles and become job ready and land a job, where a job for a lot of people gives them purpose. We talked about that kind of earlier, and finding a job or a career, something with a mission that you can identify with. And so it's not just overcoming a temporary financial barrier or otherwise, but actually like helping people commit to this purpose again. But as a team, we've done some really cool things, whether that's represent veterans at large at events, but also we've done virtual events. I'm kind of excited about those because, during COVID, a lot of people just were searching for what they could do and searching for maybe a different life than they've been living. And we pivoted then. We could have I don't know what the right word would be, maybe old school, if you will, and made a change. But we took a leap on technology. Let's bring people out on like a virtual platform where that goes. And we've learned a lot from that. And so we continue to use things like that. We're beginning to use like AI and approach of serving others. So that's very exciting. And we've even done some neat things like refreshed these job search websites so people can connect with each other at an easier level. And so anyways, without giving away people's names and stuff, I think that's what I'm most proud of. My team, they literally have bought into our vision. Our vision for my team is to treat these transition service members of veterans, military spouse, dependents we serve like family and help them reach their next career. And they've taken that to heart. I'm so proud of my team because they not only buy into my vision, they have accepted this is my piece of the vision. This is what I can do to treat someone like a family member and get them to that next level. And that's really made all the difference because when you serve someone like they're your family, you don't fall short in what you do for them. You're all in, and my team is all in. That's the thing. I hope everybody knows how proud I am of my team, and literally, there's teams like us across the nation. Get into your American Job Center and see if we can't serve you.
Yeah, and you nailed it. I mean, I mentioned earlier that Cindy and I've had the opportunity to be in many of your annual leadership conferences with your teams to provide some stuff. And the reality is many of the team members don't have direct reports, but it makes it even more important that they develop that leadership skill set and earn that influence because they absolutely serve folks. And you talked about that impact that they make. They truly buy in. And the reason I'm saying all that is, hey, if we're not treating everybody, regardless of what agency or what organization we're part of, like they're our family, should we really be leading them? I don't think so.
True. True. They are family. That's why we deal with that. I figured they serve and we served, and in the military, oftentimes you are stationed thousands of miles away from family that you grew up with, or maybe you came from a background where you didn't have the greatest family foundation. But in the military, you very much are your family. Family away from home, and you rally around each other. That's from the service members to the spouses to the dependents. It's a very tight community. That doesn't go away when you retire. In fact, you find yourself seeking other members like you in your community because you have an instant connection.
That's cool. Now, Alex, you talked a little bit about it earlier. I want to dig a little bit deeper. You mentioned, here's what we do. Here's how we're family. This is the purpose we serve as an organization. When you were separating from the United States Air Force and you were looking for, what do I want to do? What was it about that team that really connected their purpose and their values with your individual purpose and values?
Well, so what my team does, they have two different roles on my team. One serves the employers, one serves the veterans, and in either role, their mission, we have these core values that we live by, and they're very servant leadership, selfless service based. And so when I read the job posting, I just knew immediately, I don't know if I'll get this job, but it rose from like, a potential to like the top list of what I wanted to do. And God saw fit to allow me to be part of that organization. I hope that we continue that mindset, that was established before I arrived. And I've hoped to amplify that with my team. And that's what we do different. There's a lot of people out there serving veterans. There's even other organizations out there that serve veterans, helping them find employment. I just don't know that any of them do it the unique way that we do, where we're veterans. We are disabled veterans that literally are serving other veterans, making that connection with them, and it's a long-term relationship, if you will. From when we meet them to when they get the job, and oftentimes long after that. One of the most kindest and rewarding thing is when I have either people who decide to transition to a different job later come back to us, or my own staff, believe it or not, have over time thought, hey, I found another job that's paying more money or is a better opportunity, and I don't begrudge them. They move on, and we've had quite a few of those staff come back and want to be part of our team again. And that's to me, that's a tip of the hat, I think, to the uniqueness of what we do, the closeness, the family that we have amongst each other. Because in my experiences, most of somebody leaves a job, more than not, the attitude is like, well, I'm not going back to work there again, and I've really enjoyed having some of our team members come back and pour their new experiences back into our program. So hope that answers your question.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's not isolated to the relationships they maintain with you. Gosh, Cindy and I have we've built relationships with your team members, many of which have retired, that we still interact with on a weekly or a monthly basis that we never would have known otherwise. And we're not veterans, but they treat us like that family too. And it's just amazing to say, gosh, we've met some amazing people. We've got some great friendships from the work we can connect with and do together with your organization. So very, very cool.
To talk about, I hope I haven't bored anybody. To talk about my organization is to talk about the people. I mean, they're the lifeblood of what we do. So
yeah, absolutely. And yeah, they get so much purpose from that. Now, the last formal question, I'm going to come back to something you said earlier after this, but the last formal question I'm going to toss at you is, if you're talking to somebody that's younger in their career, you and I both have younger kids and so on, but if we're talking to somebody that's young and they're aspiring, they want to grow into a leadership role, what advice are you going to give somebody to truly lead and not just be a boss or a manager?
So I read one time that leadership doesn't happen behind the desk. You got to get out there. I think that's some of the most sage advice that I had come across. It's very simple. I'd also in another webinar that you had hosted years ago, I was listening to a CEO speak about how like every organization has problems and issues. And as a leader, if you think like, wow, we're doing really good, we don't have a problem or an issue, you're missing it, because you do. You don't see it. But who are the people closest to the problems are the people that you get to lead and supervise. And so not only are they close to the problems to help you see them, that's why you got to get out there and talk to your people. You identify problems, they help you with that, but they also have the solutions because they're closest to the problems and oftentimes have like great ideas for the solutions. So, don't be afraid to be flexible in your ideas of like how much. You don't have to come up with every solution to fix something. You just have to be willing to listen to your people, and then as a leader, make a smart decision, based on what go with it. If it doesn't work, you can tweak it, but get out there and lead from being amongst the people, not sitting behind a desk somewhere.
Now, that comment really ties to why you were such a good fit for panel number 3 about knowing the people and what their purpose is and connecting it back, because you know everybody on your team, you know what drives them, you know what motivates them, and you know what gives them fulfillment. And you've done so good at that, as well as here's what we do as an organization. So either panel is fantastic. And I appreciate you being willing to swap it up with me a little bit. Now, the last question I'm going to ask you, Alex, you mentioned you've got all the branches except Space Force. Now, you told me once there was some special requirement with the Coast Guard. You could only be a certain height. Do you remember that?
I joke with, we got a guy on my team that's in the Coast Guard, and he's not terribly tall. I'll say it that way. And I always joke with him that he had served very faithfully and did some pretty awesome things in the Coast Guard. But I joke with him that I thought you had to be at least 6 foot to be in the Coast Guard. And he said, no, why in the world would you think that? And I said, well, I'd always been told, like, if you fell out of the boat in the Coast Guard, you had to be tall enough where you could like stand up in the water and like walk back to the beach. And because the idea is the Coast Guard doesn't go that far out to sea, and even though we joke about it, nothing could really be further from the truth. As I've got to learn from him, especially about Coast Guard missions and stuff, and some of my other friends, they really pull off a lot of cool missions way out to sea, if you will, drug interdictions and stuff like that. So, but he is fun to joke around with.
Yeah, I love the joking. I won't go into it here in this platform, how the Marine and the Army guy and the Air Force guy decided when they're supposed to wash their hands after a trip to a bathroom. That's a story for another time. But the beauty of it is, yes, the branches joke back and forth. When Cindy and I have been with your team, we can see the fun, the family, the ribbing like siblings. But I also see how tight-knit everybody is, regardless of what branch of the family they're in. And we just love having that interaction with you and so on. Alex, this has been fun. What would you like to share that we've not touched on here?
I think the biggest thing I was hoping to today is just to be able to steer people that are in need, that, aren't, have workforce employment needs, to the American Job Center. And I mentioned that several times. And if you're listening, if you're a veteran, in particular, transitions from the military aren't easy. They're not easy for any of us, even when you think you have it figured out, and you hit daily struggles along the way, even after you find a job. But there are a lot of resources. I wanted to tell all my brothers and sisters in the military about. There are a lot of resources out there to help you. If you don't go to the American Job Center, find another place where you can connect with some other veterans who can steer you towards some of these resources out there. Because even though you're out of the military, you don't have to go it alone. And if nothing else, you can look me up on the internet and call me. I'm here for you.
Alex, thank you for sharing that. I'll add, and I want to make a plug for it. Employers, if you're not military, it's your responsibility, even if you're making the hire. Inclusion's a big deal. Diversity is one thing, but if we're not inclusive when we do it, and that's specific to when we're hiring service members, I've seen so many cases that we can say, hey, here we've got great people, but if we don't help that person really adapt to the culture that we've got and give them something to belong to, we're not doing our job. And it's not easy, but it's critical. So nice point. I'm doing it from the civilian. We carry some of that responsibility too, Alex. Nope.
Yeah, as a nation, we owe it to our vets. That's, I don't know if you caught that. I just said, as a nation, we owe it to our vets to support them. They gave some of the best years of their lives for us, and now they're back home, in our community. And so let's do what we can help for them to make them feel, proud of what they did.
Absolutely. And have remarkable skill sets, and often have a level of leadership that we just don't grow internally in our organization. So it's pretty cool to be able to mix that all together and build a family from it. So I'll wrap this up by sharing, if you're accessing this, I'll challenge you. If you need continuing education credit, if you'd like to learn more, you'll have access to reach out to Alex. We've got some links built into wherever you're seeing this, to his team and so on. But if you need continuing education credit specifically, send an email to admin@dove-development.net, and Cindy and I can hook you up with a complimentary 45-day all-access trial to our full Leading at the Next Level program. It's got north of 160 hours worth of content in it, all approved for credit through HRCI and SHRM and a couple other entities, but those are the big ones that are recognizable. So with that said, Alex, thank you for taking the time to do this. I can't wait to see you, gosh, in 4 weeks from the time we have this conversation. But for anybody else, hard to tell when you'll see it, but make sure you're there with us on June 13th to meet Alex in person. Thanks again for your time, brother.
Thanks, Wes. Be blessed, brother.
All right.